Okay, thank you so much for coming to the first series of the Urban and Regional Planning Seminar here at UTSA. I'm pleased to see so many faces, so many known faces, so many new faces. And I'm not gonna take a long time, but just to explain first, yes, get some food if you haven't. Second, we are going to be doing this seminar series hopefully as a continuous effort every second Friday of every month at noon.
Municipal government.
And then if
So
we're gonna need more slots, we're gonna keep putting, but every second Friday of every month, hopefully we're gonna be able to host you guys here to discuss relevant urban and regional planning topics. So today we have the Food Forest Initiative at Padre Park.
Okay. Well, I hope you feel better soon. I just had a quick question about.
I think we have.
Okay. I have a quick question about CERT. So I'm handing in the physical application on behalf of the city this afternoon.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you. That happens. It's just part of the show, right? All right. So I'll let Michelle introduce the presenters and take it away.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Ochoa. Ooh, I think we're caught.
Yes.
All right. Let us get situated here. Welcome. So again, my name is Michelle Garza. I work for the River Authority as an urban and regional or as a planning coordinator. And I'm also a student here as an urban and regional planning graduate student. So it's a really nice culmination of school and work and community getting together to do a project that we're really excited to share with you today. The Food Forest, if you don't know, is located in Padre Park on the Mission Reach. And as a planning coordinator at the River Authority, I coordinate development along the river. And so when this one came around, I got to be part of the technical group that looked at it and get the River Authority to give some input on it. And as an urban and regional planning student, our student association also got interested and decided to go to a community meeting and learn firsthand how the community was being outreached and what that looked like. And of course, we wanted to celebrate it and share it. So we wrote a proposal and got accepted to the American Planning Association Texas chapter conference. And we just presented last month there in El Paso. And then when Dr. Ochoa heard about that, he invited us to present here. And so we're happy to do the presentation again for you. It's going to be part presentation, part panel discussion with our community folks here. And so to introduce them, we've got Nadia Gaona. She is part of the Food Forest Council, but she's also working with the Food Policy Council, which is the group that initiated this and got the county to share some of that land with the community. She also works for Metro Health, and I had the pleasure of working with her on this project as part of that technical group. And then we have Luis Escalante, who is a graduate student with myself and part of the UTSA board. And then we have Jesus Jose Reyes, or as we know him as Jesse, a community member and a tribal member of the community. He's also part of the Talom executive board. So he's going to be talking about the project from his perspective. So when we presented this at APA, we had some objectives. That was kind of part of the criteria. Sorry, I wanted to see if we could remove this again. High floating? High floating meeting controls. Thank you. Awesome. So our learning objectives around the conference really talked about, how to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in a community, how to make communities more resilient. So that's what our topic was, or our focus. And part of that is really connecting with historically underserved communities and the leaders in those communities. And then doing that by working with local governments, which I represent, advocates of the community, and of course, community leaders themselves. And really the goal is to create these multi-beneficial projects like food forests in communities of need. So Why are food forests so important in San Antonio? This is a 2019 USDA map that identifies census tracts or areas in San Antonio with the highest number of residents in low-income communities with low access to food supermarkets. It uses 4 measures of low access, and one of those is shown here in orange, where significant numbers or shares of residents are low income. And they're more than a mile in urban areas away from a supermarket and more than 20 miles away from a supermarket in rural areas. Circled there is the Talom food forest. As you can see, the food forest project is located squarely in that red area, what I would call a food desert, or what we know as a food desert, where there's a significant number of residents there that are some of the lowest incomes in the city, and they're living the farthest away from a supermarket. The San Antonio Metropolitan Health District's SA Forward plan provides data on food insecurity metrics in San Antonio. Shown here is the Padre Park zip code, and that's where the Talom food forest lives. In it, there's about 29.5% of people living with food insecurity receiving food stamp assistance. That's 14.5% greater than the city of San Antonio at 15% and 18% greater than the state of Texas at 11% of households receiving food stamps. This is an image from the San Antonio's equity matrix. It maps race, income, and other factors in San Antonio. Shown here is the combined score of race and income in a heat map. The blue and purple indicate high concentrations of residents that are both people of color and low income households in that census tract. And as we zoom into the Padre Park food forest area at census tract 1508, the combined score of income and race is 9, shown here as purple. These and other factors presented culminate in adverse health outcomes. The map here of the social determinants of health is from that SA Forward plan. It shows percentage of residents reporting that they have diabetes and have no high school diploma in that census tract in San Antonio. Called out on the map is Padre Park census tract. It's that burnt orange area, kind of in the middle, where we've got the little pop-up there, where 21.1% of people surveyed there report that they have diabetes, 26.6% report that they don't have a high school diploma. And looking at that key in the bottom right-hand corner, in burnt orange, you can see that the correlation plot, looking at the bottom right-hand corner, the burnt orange color indicates that those percents are relatively high compared to the rest of the city. Another way to look at the data is on the upper right-hand corner. The correlation plot shown in the upper right-hand corner shows the correlation between adults with diabetes that don't have a high school diploma. So although one factor may not directly cause the other, there is a correlation shown. Understanding these issues, the Food Policy Council proposed the food forest as a way to address those needs and those issues. They worked with the county to identify 4 acres in Padre Park, shown here outlined in red, next to Mission County Park, if you're ever in that area. And it's right along the San Antonio River, where conditions for growing food were found to be good. The next steps that the Food Policy Council took were to really connect with the area's historically underserved community and the leaders to reach out to local governments, advocates, and the community to get engaged and provide input on the project. So, as I mentioned, I also work for the River Authority, and through that work, we were outreached as part of the technical advisory group. We're also a local government entity, and we advise on projects along the river. As part of that, our team reviewed the flood risk mitigation, green infrastructure, native plantings, and regional water planning for the area. As I also mentioned, this is along the Mission Reach. Padre Park is along the Mission Reach, or on the Mission Reach. And this project was managed and provided technical input by the River Authority. And it's one of the first significant river rehabilitation projects using fluvial geomorphology and sediment transport principles along that river area in a semi-arid region. It's also the first project of its type to be justified through the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers ecosystem restoration and cost-benefit process. So the River Authority is really tasked with making sure that it works to protect this area and maintain it, because it was, a huge investment from the city, about $271 million investment from the city, county, and federal governments. So this is the proposed project site, or the site that was ultimately chosen. And as part of the River Authority's work, we were part of that technical advisory group, and we were able to analyze that process even further. Let's admit this person. And as I mentioned, we looked at things like historically native plants in the area and native edible plants. And then part of the biggest technical work that we did was looking at the floodplain. As you can see, Padre Park is in a floodplain, and that was part of the reason the project was chosen. You can see the floodplain extent with that Padre Park in that circle there. And you can see that much of the area is inundated during the 100-year flood. We looked at the hydraulic capability of that area, and really it has to be maintained as a flood control or flood conveyance area. So we determined how many trees essentially could go in each of those areas. The two areas circled there in red had tree densities found for them. And so, we were able to say, you can plant, 27 in one area and 47 in the other. And then we also looked at the on-site contours of the site. You can see here kind of the light circles in the areas or the arrows. That's essentially the flood or when the rain hits that area, where the water will go. And that's helpful when you're trying to plant and intercept that water. And essentially, part of our main concern at the River Authority is looking at pollution that runs off every time it rains. So we wanted to make sure that any potential contaminants, nutrients, and other things were kept on site and wouldn't run off. Because essentially, stormwater runoff and all of the pollutants here are the main cause of pollution in our waterways in the U.S. So we're looking at making sure that we're using that runoff as a resource instead of a waste product. And one of the ways to do that is really mimicking pre-development hydrology, or using that water. And this is an image from our technical guidance manual for low impact development, which really emphasizes, using the land and the natural site features, mimicking the natural processing so that you can polish water for quality. And in the case of the food forest, it's not a building being constructed on site, but we are looking at adding maybe plants and being able to use that water, and then maybe some impervious cover and maybe future buildings. So now I'm going to turn it over to Nadia to talk about the food forest itself and the outreach component.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, this is just to so we can hear each other through Zoom, right? So, hi everyone, my name is Nadia Gaona, and I'm a community health worker, and I have a new role as a food policy analyst for Metro Health through our policy and civic engagement department. At the initiation of this project, I was a community health worker with our Healthy Neighborhoods program under community health. So I'm going to give a little bit of the background of the project. As Michelle was saying, it was initiated by the Food Policy Council of San Antonio through a grant from the Office of Innovation for $25,000. And we worked with the County Parks Department and with Commissioner Clay Flores' office in Precinct 1 to identify this plot of land at Padre Park. There were a few other places that we were looking at through the County Parks Department, but this was the one that was most ideal due to, as Michelle was saying, its proximity to the river. It had water on site. and it had just like existing amenities that would be really beneficial to creating a public space that people could use. Through my work with healthy neighborhoods, as a community health worker on the South Side, we have, I want to say 14 now, community health workers all over the east, south, and west sides of town, in different neighborhoods. We basically have one community health worker for each neighborhood. And it's our role to get to know the community, to identify resident leaders, and to help and support them in doing things that are going to improve the health of their community. So when the Food Policy Council, I'm also a board member for the Food Policy Council. So when we were initially looking at the different areas of land, Padre Park sits in one of our neighborhoods, the Mission San Jose neighborhood. So it was really important to us to, so the project was initiated through the Food Policy Council. It wasn't necessarily something that the community had said, hey, we want a food forest here, right? But now that we were able to identify that this was a good place for it, it was part of our role to make sure that from the beginning, we were interacting with the community, we were engaging people, and we were asking them, is this something that you really want here in this space? Is this something that will be a benefit to your community? So that was the work that Healthy Neighborhoods was able to provide with this role, by connecting some of our resident leaders to the project, by doing asset mapping and making sure that we were looking at what are all of the assets that are already here in the community, where are the schools, the churches, the community leaders, the neighborhood associations, the mission library, all of those things, so that we could make sure that we were, reaching out to people that would be directly impacted and hopefully benefit from this space. All of the different indigenous groups that we were able to connect with AIT, with the intertribal group. So a bunch of different assets in the neighborhood. We worked diligently to connect with all of these folks and to invite them to community meetings, and not just invite them to the meetings that we were having, but to go where they were, to go to the neighborhood association meetings, to block walk at different apartment complexes. So that was pretty much our role. I want to say that initially, the objectives for the project were to utilize underutilized floodplain land to grow food, right? It's primarily food security. Through our community engagement process, we were also able, and to promote environmental awareness. Through our community engagement process, we were also able to hone in that a big need and objective that the community was able to identify was to facilitate cultural and practical education, basically to be able to connect our families to the land, to connect to our history and the ways in which we have interacted with the earth and with our planet historically. Because we know that that's how health behaviors change. If you have like a story, if you have connection to people, this really helps inspire improved health and actually being able to utilize the food that we're producing in the space to provide increased food security. Let's see. Oh, and another thing is people just wanted a place to spend time together and get together with community. So that's also been identified, that anything we do there, we can plant trees, right? But we also want walking paths. We want seating. We want, places where people can spend time together, educational space, all of these different things. Oh, thank you. Okay, so as I was saying, one of the roles that our program has provided for the Food Policy Council is to help in developing an executive committee, a community engagement committee, and identifying that we also needed technical advice on the project. For the community engagement committee, a big priority was creating a community inclusion plan. And Ian Dill helped craft this. I'm just going to kind of go over like the main values of the project. The food forest will always center community strength, voice, and culture throughout the planning and building process. This means prioritizing accessibility, both for planning events and in the site's design. Accessibility is so important. One of the things about the site is We do have like some parking limitations, and we do have some bathroom access issues on site. So that's something that's been identified as that's something that we can really work on in the future with the county to try and provide easier access to the site, because we want people to be able to use it. We want our elders to be able to use it. People with disability issues, we want ADA access on the site. The well-being of the community surrounding the site itself is one of the highest concerns for project planners. Pursuant to this, we will always be transparent and communicative with food forest neighbors. Communication is of utmost importance. It's not something that we always get like 100% right, but it's something that, we really strive to be as communicative as possible with our partners and with the community surrounding the area. In design and execution, we always seek to be creative, helpful, and mindful. Channeling these values from community members, committee members, and community leaders will ensure that the project serves everyone's needs. The project is built on grassroots knowledge production and will stay committed to group, not individual decision-making. This is something that, has been a real work in progress. A lot of the time, in our different work areas, we're used to moving fast alone, right? But we can move farther together. So that's something that we've been able to really learn together as a committee and as a community with this project, is if we really want to have a sustainable project, that we are going to have to make sure that we're able to work together as a group and come together to define our shared values and our shared priorities for the project. As new challenges and opportunities for working with the community emerge, we expect everyone working on the project to remain bold, adaptable, and open to change. This is really important. We can't just stay stuck in our ways. One of the things about the project is we do like to talk about like different like permaculture values and things like that. And, being able to adapt to the input that we receive from the community, from the land itself. Like if something's not working on the land, we have to, be open to, if our initial idea was like we were going to, plant a bunch of pecans, but maybe the pecans aren't taking in the space, how can we change the plan to make sure that it's working and that it's actually going to, be successful. Or if we're getting some feedback from the community that that's not something that they want to see, we have to be able to adjust to that too. Oops, wrong. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our community engagement strategies and just like hone in on a couple of the ones that we've had so far. So this project, we had our first community meeting in April of 2021. So we're a little over a year into the project. Last October, we had a really awesome community engagement event. We had 75 plus, I want to say it was like actually like 100 participants from surrounding neighborhoods, apartment complexes, and local nonprofits, I think that's supposed to say. Outreach for the event included block walking, community meetings, social media, and e-blast. Yeah, we really worked hard to try and reach as many people as possible for this event. And it was really neat because I feel like at least one or two people from every place that we touched in our engagement strategy was able to join us at the event and share their stories and share what a project like this means to their community and just their background and their history and, growing up with their families and just different things that they remember around growing up, food, preparing meals with their families, going to the river and going fishing. So many beautiful stories. A lot of the history of the descendants of Mission San Jose around the displacement in the area came up. There was just so many wonderful stories that we heard that day. And, we're really trying hard to take all of that data that we're receiving from people and all of those stories and make sure that it's integrated into, the ultimate design of this project. So we had guided walks of the space, listening circles, surveys, site maps. We had a a lot of different strategies to making sure that we received that community input. I feel like the listening circle was one of my favorite things for sure. And one of the things that came out of it, I like this quote. We want to think of this space not only as a space to harvest food, but as a space to share knowledge and native culture to the youth. I thought that was really powerful. In February of this year, we had our first tree planting event on February 26th. It was cold and rainy and miserable, but we still had 50 people come out from different areas of the community, from different partner organizations to plant trees in this space. And Jesse's going to talk a little bit about the name of the project, but that was one of the outcomes of our community engagement strategy. Was the name came from community members, and that was really, really important. We're wanting to move forward into hiring a steward for the space because we know that, people are really passionate about it. We have Tuesday work days every Tuesday, and consistently we've had like a lot of energy and excitement around this project. People are coming out, but we can't, live on volunteer effort alone. Like, we need to have some paid funding. And another big priority that was identified in our community engagement was green jobs and training for people who are wanting to do work in land stewardship. We have continued partnership with American Indians in Texas. Thank you, Ramon, for being here, and Jesse. And, it's just been really wonderful. Just all of the support and guidance that, they've been able to provide, as well as some of the other tribal organizations that we've been working with. Yeah. And we're just continuing to, facilitate discussions with members of the Indigenous community. So we had a really wonderful meeting when was it, the food sovereignty event that we had? I can't remember when that was. I don't even know what day it is half the time. I think it was like in August or something. But we had this beautiful food sovereignty community conversation at Slattery Hall next to Mission San Juan. And Linda Jimenez, an elder of the Tepilam Coahuiltecan Nation, facilitated that for us. And it was really beautiful to see all of the different community members, partner organizations, just to come together and talk about food sovereignty and how the food forest may serve to be a place where this can happen, or an example for other places in San Antonio for food sovereignty to take place. Really wonderful stuff. So we're just continuing to have different events and activities on site. And, just welcoming people to join in that and to help us, discover, like, what do you want to see in this space? What does the community want to see here? This was our Indigenous Peoples Day event in October. That was really fun. It was, we planted about 75 different nopal varieties on site. We had our first food demonstration, because that's something that people want to see there is, okay, so we can grow this, but how do we actually use the food? So that's Goko Alexander Barrera doing a food demonstration on how to prepare nopales, and it was so delicious. And yeah, we had the Texas Intertribal Group came out and they did a blessing for us. The Tehuan Band of Mission Indians came out. Jesse did a blessing from Tepilam. So that's one of the really nice things that we've been able to see in this space, is all of the different people coming together, the different neighborhood associations, the different tribes, the different partner organizations. This place seems to be a real nice convergence of different visions that people have. And it's just been really a beautiful thing to see. And then I'm going to give it over to Jesse and Luis.
Yeah, so really great introduction to this food forest project. And I'll just talk a little bit about on the student side. The introduction of Indigenous peoples into planning is really recent, starting around the late 90s. And then most recently this year, the actual American Planning Association started the Indigenous chapter. So now there's like an actual presence of Indigenous people in planning in the U.S. So when Michelle and I went to the planning conference in May, we got to meet with a bunch of Native and Indigenous peoples who were starting up that new chapter in the APA. Just wanted to ask Jesse on the name of Tamox Talom. How did you come up with the proposal? And could you talk a little bit about the name change?
Hello. Um, my name is Jesus Reyes. I'm an anthropologist by training, and this project is very passionate to me. I'm just a member of the community, and we've been here, like one of our elders said, Ramon's grandpa, who said, 6 flags have flown, and we're still here. We're still here, and that's what I'm representing from this community is thousands of years of lineal descendancy, and so we're all we do is daily living. You know, some of us have adapted to what is our social society now, and some of it is bad and some of it is good. Bad would be the diabetes pandemic, and so that's what I'm hoping to address. And the diabetes prevention is what I'm trying to address with this food forest, and that's why the name Tamox Talom means fire spirit. Our children grow up with our sacred fire and our medicine. Medicine would be the food that we grow, the food that still exists, uh, all the way down to northeastern Mexico, all the way up to here, and that would be different cactuses, which we planted at the food forest, trees. One of the plants that we use in our ceremony is paji in our language, otherwise known as peyote, and that's very sacred to us. So, and that's a medicine, and it's very filled with alkaline. Alkaline is very an important ingredient for the health of diabetes, especially. You know, so the moctalom. To give you on an example, um, as far as the science is concerned, photosynthesis, which turns the leaves green, takes place in a spiritual change for the trees, and that's the same thing for human beings. So we can beat this pandemic by eating a lot of alkaline. Alkaline could be leafy greens. I started out eating HEB groceries, kale, stuff like that. So that has a lot of alkaline in it. So so that helped me with my. I'm off of insulin because of it now. That for a diabetic, it's very hard to 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 wane off. What is it? Insulin, because one needs to maintain their living. So that's one of the things the community is going to benefit if we can teach them how to harvest. First of all, grow permaculture, and then harvest and cook. And they can heal, just like all the plants. And that's how we're connected to everything that is. So tamok talom, and the children say that in our ceremonies. They sing that, and so that's how the community is tied into this project, and that's why I'm passionate, because it's all about sharing each other. That's what we did from the beginning. Native Americans would cry along the Spaniard because he shipwrecked here, didn't know how to get back home, so we cried along with him. We knew that the human value of what it is to be human and help each other. So I hope I answered the question.
And one more question to Nadia. If you could talk a little bit about the challenges of community engagement here in San Antonio, and how does Tamuktalam amend those challenges?
Okay, I think what we were thinking about with the challenges around community engagement, different nonprofits here, they know how to engage with the community, right? But when we're talking about city processes and different other institutions, a lot of the time we already have the answer figured out, right? And then we go and we do outreach to the community, and then we say, we brought the community in, and that's part of it. We checked that box that we did that community engagement, right? That's one of the things that we've been really working on with this project, because like I said initially, it was something that was initially identified by the Food Policy Council as like a thing that we wanted to do, or that the Food Policy Council wanted to do. So from the beginning, we were working to how can we make sure that we're getting the community in as quickly as possible to really make sure that this is a priority for them as well. And it's been really nice to see through all of our strategies that we've done to engage with the community, this is something that they do see as a value that will benefit them and their families for generations to come, to address food insecurity and to be able to have a durable community asset. What was the rest of the question?
No, I think that's.
Yeah.
Talk about how.
Yeah, I think so. Just making sure that we are Jesse, we met at the Mission San Jose Neighborhood Association. We did a presentation there. He came up to us right afterwards, and it's really cool because he was actually working on food forest projects prior to this at the Land Heritage Institute. And for one reason or another, it wasn't able to really catch steam there. So being able to say, well, we do have the resources here. We have been able to make those relationships with these different organizations to secure this land, to do this project, and to be able to bring Jesse in as a committee member on our executive leadership team, so that, the community members where this is really important to them are actually being able to make those decisions on what we do with this space moving forward. So that's something that we really are trying to shift with this project, is making sure that community is there from the ground up, and also making sure that they are involved in the decision-making process. Oh,
yeah. So this is.
That's how that works.
So this is part of the panel discussion. This is for everyone to answer. What is the significance of grassroots movement to develop this food forest, and do you believe that could have been developed just through the local government itself?
Going back to that word, adaptability, social constructs is what changes, so our social perspective changes, and we're still here because of it. For example, the first cowboys were Indians, so that's what the missions presented itself, the ranching system. So that we adapted to the horse,
So I want to say that a food forest, of course, it can be established by local government, right? Like a government institution, like we were saying earlier, can say, oh, we want to have this this food forest, or we want to have this urban farm, or we want to, have this like sustainability center, correct? But is it going to look like what we've been able to accomplish with Talom, right? Is it going to be, named by the community? Is it going to be led and run by community members? Being able to like develop our own processes and, figure out what the goals are and the objectives. And they could do it probably, but it would probably look a lot different. It might have actually like more resources, right? But is the heart there, and that sustainability aspect by bringing community members in from the beginning. I want to say that might be like one of the main differences of the project. It certainly has been like a big challenge because of that, but we're still trucking along, and we're moving forward, and we're learning together. So it's been a wonderful thing to see.
we talked about a little bit, the current challenges that Tamox face. How does the community, US council policy and board members overcome some of it?
Yeah, most definitely. So, like any project, I mean, we're going to face challenges. We're going to, when we're working with community members, you have to work really, really hard to ensure that inclusion and that accessibility. We're not necessarily like we're saying we want to have like a land steward position available eventually. That we're working on funding, but at the current time, we're not paying people for their involvement in this project, right? And different people have, lives, they have full-time jobs. So that's always a challenge, is making sure that we're doing everything like within our capacity to make sure that we're reaching the most people, and just continuously striving for that inclusion has always been a challenge. Communication for sure. We do have our various ways of reaching out, like we were saying earlier, like the block walking, email blasts. We always wanted to do text messaging, but that one was really hard because we don't have like a group text messaging app that we can use at the moment. Fundraising, all of those things. Those are always like challenges that you face, but just making sure that we're just continuously striving to do better. I want to say too, how we were talking about earlier, the asset mapping. So that's something that we were able to bring community members in to be on the leadership team for this project, but it's something that like our program has had to train on as far as community engagement, making sure that we're doing that continuously. So that's always fun to, the project was kind of a fast turnaround. Usually when you see projects of this scale, there's like a little bit of a longer community engagement process. So that's always been a challenge too, is the kind of the fast-paced nature of some of these projects. And that's kind of when you have like the institutions kind of like coming in, it's like everything's like fast-paced nature, grant cycles, we have to do things within this certain amount of time in order to spend the funding. So that's always a challenge that we've been figuring out different ways of how to move past and just continuously improve.
And looking forward, so this is just really in the beginning of this project's life. What are some of the plans for the future of this community?
Well, I'm going to tie it into the challenges. Spiritual challenge is teaching the people how they're connected to the land, and how important, if you care for the land, you're caring for yourself. So that's the challenge that I see, and maybe trying to reiterate, me as an anthropologist, I got involved as an anthropologist because they were telling our story, and they never really asked us, what did y'all eat, or what do you all eat? And they wanted to find out. We didn't have McDonald's back then, but we eat McDonald's now, and it's not in my repertoire anymore. But I know what my grandmother prepared as far as while going out and harvesting white leaf yucca or thin leaf yucca, and would make flor de pita. So those are one example. So the challenge I'm seeing is trying to convey to the general public how this food forest can benefit them spiritually and physiologically as a health component too. So I think we have some ideas, but it'll come together,
Yeah, definitely all of that. I want to say now we have some of the trees in the ground. This January, we're planning to plant a whole. I don't know if we can go back to the slide that showed the design. Yeah, so like I'll try and point. So we were already able to plant this area. We planted about 60 trees, and I think about 50 of them survived. So we're going to be doing some replanting in the next couple of weeks. So if anybody wants to join us, we have a Facebook group right now. It's Talom Food Forest. So like, please join that and come out and join us. We also we completed our comprehensive design for the space. This was just kind of like a preliminary design, and the architect is going, taking the other feedback that we received from the community. But this area is on a slope. So this is a really good opportunity to highlight some permaculture principles and different techniques there, and low impact development techniques that Michelle was talking about earlier with the lay of the land and how the water flows across the land. So we were able to put in some bioswales and berms that we're going to be planting in January. So that's going to be really exciting. And we did a lot of cultivated varieties in this space. But in this area, we're going to get to play around a lot more with some native plants, some medicinal trees, like Hercules Club and all sorts of really cool things like that. So once we get that kind of put in, we've been really excited about all the different like educational things that we can do, the different community events, just social gatherings. So that's what we're going to be looking at for the horizon. As well as developing signage for the site, educational signage, and also, what was I gonna say? Oh, it slipped my mind. But yeah, just all the different things. So, harvesting plan. Yeah, like where's the harvest gonna go, right? Like, how are we going to figure that out? Already it's been, I haven't mentioned this yet, but it's been really exciting to see because here's like another like adaptation that kind of happened was this site was kind of being like, it's called the orchard side, right? So we were kind of just doing a bunch of like cultivated varieties of fruit trees and didn't have any interplantings with the fruit trees. So community members just started planting around the bases of the trees. They started planting squash and beans and things like that. And we started having our first harvests already from the site. So we're kind of playing around with, are we going to be able to maybe assign like different community gardens in San Antonio? They have different like plot agreements, things like that. So we're going to try and figure that out. Like for the most part, we're thinking that any produce that comes from the site is going to be open to all. But if people want to have like specific areas that they are cultivating and they're tending, that we just have appropriate signage so that they're able to, make sure that they're getting at least some of the harvest from like the work that they put in. So a lot of different like neat things on the horizon, and we're always open to ideas from people about, what they think could help, make the site the best that it could be.
Do you guys have any questions for our panel members? Okay. We'll just pass back and forth here.
This question, Nadia, what did you find the most effective way to engage the community here? You may have touched upon it already, but was it really the walking the blocks, door knocking? What was the most effective way?
Right. So we had a lot of people doing the block walking, right? And we flyered like entire apartment complexes. From that effort, I think we were able to get 2 families out, one from each apartment complex. So you could say that it, like some people might say that wasn't effective, right? But it was actually like really cool. Like the quality of the interactions that we got from those folks and them coming out to the activity and sharing their stories was really wonderful. So I honestly, I really like the block walking, and it's always fun to go out there and just get a little exercise and doing that block walking. I think text messaging when we are able to do it, it really works because, you know, sometimes people don't really read their emails, you know what I mean? So, but if you shoot like an individual text to somebody, it's just that the one-on-ones, it takes a lot of time, but to me, like that's where we get the most, I guess, bang for our buck. And also the work days, just having those consistent work days where people can come. Sometimes we don't always get all the work done because we're talking and we're getting to connect with people. But yeah, so I said like 3 things, but yeah, all the 3 of those things. I want to say the work days are probably really good. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Hey, y'all. So, one big question, of course, for me, and I understand this is a future project, long-term goals, things like that. Is there a plan for sustaining financial support and funding to continue to grow and build those plans out? And is it the Food Policy Council that will be doing that, or, you know, is there other partnerships that are in play that would help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently, the initial funds from the Office of Innovation, those went primarily into the irrigation on site because we wanted to make sure that we had that covered as far as like making sure that the trees were going to be able to stay alive for the initial planting. We do have through our Food Policy Council, former president has been able to identify some some private donors that have been able to pledge that they are going to be able to provide funding for at least the first initial years for the steward. After that, I think coming out of that food sovereignty event, we were able to really connect with some of like different partner organizations. Initially, we wanted to make sure that we reached out to the community first before really engaging with partner organizations, because we wanted to make sure that we knew what the community wanted first, because sometimes when you get all these different like institutions and nonprofits and organizations together, it kind of like becomes like its own like creation. Yeah. So now that we have that mandate from the community of what they want to see, that's, I think, the next step is like reaching out to those partner organizations and saying, here are all the puzzle pieces we need filled. Like, how can you help us like connect with that? And thanks for reminding me too. The county also has like a really cool project that they're working on. It was like really synchronicity or something, you know, that they're going to be building a Native American Cultural Center on site at Padre Park. So we're kind of, and I think there's some folks here that are working on that project through the architecture school too. So that's so cool to know. But maybe we can leverage some of those funds from the building of that site to bring in some of the infrastructure and those walking paths and things. So hopefully it's all just kind of in the air right now. I know that was like a big like answer to the question, but to say we're not sure yet, but we're looking for different ways. So thank you.
For the folks online.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Beginning of the presentation, there was a number of presentation is where at that number, can we review the slide you showed? Yeah, I could my email address. I thought it was like on one of the first slides. This program is da 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 da. I wrote down a number. Okay.
Any
Thank you for sharing the project. I didn't know much about this project until now, and it's really exciting to hear all this community engagement portion. And I mean, the goal is to create I guess, to harvest food, but actually that can be actually means to achieve all the different goals. I was really excited to see all that. And I guess quick question, just out of curiosity, so you mentioned about the flood risk and being on a floodplain. So I just got curious, like, has the site been ever flooded? Is this something that we need to be concerned about? Or, you know, sometimes it can be on a 100-year floodplain, but may not have been flooded at all. So just got curious about it.
Yeah. I haven't looked up to see how often it's flooded, but it is the 100-year flood. And I know that we're updating the floodplain, something with Atlas 14. We're looking at future rainfall. So our current 100-year flood is not the same as what it was. So those floodplains are being updated. And I know, Nadia, you talked about, or maybe you haven't talked about it yet, like that whole plan to have orchards and floodplains. But I know historically in our city and a little bit outside our city, we have forests. Like we have a pecan forest in one of our parks at Hilton Park. So having these areas where they're periodically inundated, it's helpful to trees and the like. You know, it may be difficult if it happens when they just planted the plants. You know, that might cause some destruction, but that's kind of part of the idea, is that you'll have water there where you might not always have it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we're not building there, right, because of the 100-year flood. So it's this like underutilized land. I think that's a really good point, is that there's already like a lot of existing pecan orchards in San Antonio. They're very, very old, along like the Salado Creek. And I want to say those are in floodplains. So, and the trees are still there. So, but yeah, that's a really good thing to think about.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. In the Master Urban and Regional Planning here that we have, in the economic development class, we teach these two ways of seeing how cities or spaces or territories develop. The one vision is, you know, we go and then we exploit as much as we can out of the resources, and we, you know, the profit maximization, capitalization type of approach, which is let's grow, and then the growth will be, you know, trickle down, and people will be okay. But there's a new strain of the literature that talks about degrowth and how we, you know, become more sustainable. And it looks like your project seems to be a very good example that is local on how can we better assess the needs to how to create a new system for people to feed themselves and connect to the land again. So my question at the end of the day is, how do we make this mainstream? And what are the challenges to make this mainstream? So people understand that grow, maybe it's not the answer, but degrowth and growing at slower space, more connected to the land, more connected to whatever it is that we're eating, it's an alternative that is real and is plausible, because people sometimes think, you know, that's just not feasible, you know, with the work schedule that I have, with all these other things, it's just not feasible that I spend, you know, all this time trying to take care of the land. It's just, so how do we make this feasible? How do we make this mainstream?
That's a really awesome question. And I'm like so excited to learn more about degrowth. The thing that just comes to mind is, you know, when we're talking about that, like individual people, you know, may not think that they have time for it. Well, it might have something to do with, like, you know, the systems that we have in place that are making it difficult for those things to take place, right? So I think it has, in order to make it mainstream, you know, I'm so glad that, you know, we're talking about that in our academic institutions. We're talking a lot about it in the work that we're doing with our policy and civic engagement office at Metro Health, right? Like, how can we slow things down in order to make it to where it's more accessible. It's easier for people to be able to do these things, right? Because like when we're talking about like food insecurity, right? It's not just about if people have food, right? It's about like, do they have like that financial security and that financial stability in the housing? So it's a multi-pronged approach with all of these different systems and institutions. And I think it just takes different people in all of these places to come together and to form like coalitions, so that we can address these different systemic issues that are taking place that are making it really hard for people. Because we have to slow down that crazy growth that is just like eating everything, right? It's eating our planet, it's eating our people alive. So just doing that work to stay connected, and figure out how we can work together to slow things down. You also reminded me, I just want to do a shout out for this organization here in San Antonio called Deceleration. They're a journalist organization, and they talk a lot about how we can it's probably degrowth that we're talking about here. So yeah, so check that out too if you have a chance.
That would be cool to have like a real like actual conversation, like with everybody. Like, I want to know. Yeah.
From both of you. But it ties in, I think, a little bit with what Professor was just talking about. But also my previous question about funding plans. How important though is activation of the space? How important is that for this plan for this project to be to really take hold as a long-term solution and potential funding, continuous funding from different city departments? Now, how important is activation of the space?
Kind of goes back to the thing your grandpa said. We've been here we're still here. Six Flags has flown. I think it can be a very long time, So we just got to nurture ourselves by nurturing it, I'm talking on every level, physiological and spiritual. And spiritual would be coming together as the most important race, which is a human race,
that pretty much covers it. But yeah, I think activation is so important. I mean, in order for there to be continuous energy put in, like we have to have people using the space, right? And just bringing in our different like partner organizations, and seeing like how can it be a benefit, and how can we have more educations and more events and activities there so that people want to keep coming, and so there's like so much movement and growth around the space that'll entice people to like put more energy and resources into it. Thank you. That's great. I would love to talk more about what different ideas and brainstorm how we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. My name is Greg Griffin. I'm an associate professor and program leader here in urban and regional planning at UTSA. Once again, thank you all so much for starting our first urban and regional planning seminar with this fantastic project. Appreciate it so much. So our program prepares planners for dealing with the known and emerging challenges in urban and regional contexts, which we do through the values of collaboration, innovation, and inclusiveness. I can't imagine any project that elevates these values more than this example. So we all clearly have the same goals in mind, and the same ideas about scaling knowledge. What you have done, you've brought this not just locally, but you've taken it on the road. You've been out to El Paso and shared it with the next generation of continuing planners there, and then back taking it home with our group, not just planners, but experts in the built environment and in community building. And so thank you so much for connecting with that and working together to scale knowledge and skills. And thanks also to Dr. Esteban Lopez Ochoa for starting this all off and bringing us all together. Thank you. So with that, enjoy your Friday, but don't leave without sharing your continued questions, ideas, grabbing food, learning more about the Urban Planning Student Association from our fantastic student and professional leaders, Michelle Garza and Luis Escalante. Thank you. Thanks everybody online. We'll close this out too.
I wanted to say your book that I forgot. Like,
Yeah.